Hey, how's it going, everyone? Today, I'm going to share with you a dividend investing story that will lift your spirits, kind of like your poor office chair that is hanging on, supporting your overweight physique. Ain't nobody else gonna tell you, but it's about time that you replace that office chair with today's video sponsor, which is your nasty looking belly button. Be honest with me, when you hear people say my retirement portfolio has to be $5 million or even $2 million, what's your natural reaction? I'll tell you what, it's normal to think to yourself, those portfolio numbers are too big. I can never. Or maybe even, you gotta be a rich person to retire rich. Or perhaps it ain't for me. It's hopeless. Who are we kidding? Your initial thought is most likely, I have too much debt and my receding hairline is too distracting for me to think about retirement. Jokes aside, the point is, we come up with so many excuses as to why we can't accumulate a big retirement portfolio. But before your negativity spreads to everyone around you, let me tell you the story of Sylvia Bloom, who as a secretary built an investment portfolio of $9 million in her lifetime. Sylvia was born in New York City in 1919 to a family of immigrants. She grew up during the Great Depression, and let me tell you, that influenced her decision-making skills as an adult. She worked until she was 96 years young and then retired. She tragically passed away shortly after her retirement. It's like her body knew she had earned her rest and it was her time to go. And speaking of the age 96, it's an election year, and aren't both of the presidential candidates up there in age? Listen, I have nothing against people leading the greatest country in the world from the comforts of a retirement home, but regardless of who wins, whether it's Orange Man or Sleepy Joe, they better not increase the dividend tax rates. That's all I'm saying. Could you please stop involving politics in these videos? Alright, before I offend potential new viewers, you must be wondering, how did she build a $9 million portfolio? So let's talk about her working life. Sylvia joined a law firm as a secretary in 1947, and she worked at the same law firm as a secretary for 67 years until she turned 96 years old, and that's actually when she retired. But it wasn't some random Better Call Saul type of law firm. Rather, it was a practice that specialized in mergers and acquisitions and investment deals all around Wall Street, which means the partners and lawyers were drowning in cash as it's one of the more lucrative law sectors. So, it's safe to assume she was paid better than a secretary of a law firm in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. But let's be real, she wasn't rolling in cash either because it's the lawyers that were making the most bank. The secretary, not so much. It's kind of like someone telling me that they work for Amazon. For some people, they think that working for Amazon is prestigious and it must be a company that is paying their people really well since the company made $500 billion last year in revenue. The reality is there's a huge income disparity between the software engineers that work in Seattle and the packers at an Amazon warehouse in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. They both play an important role, except one role requires your butt crack to be a swamp at the end of every shift and your body to be absolutely tired. Actually, you're right. They're probably both drained at the end of the day and sweaty. And just like how she was loyal by working at the same company her entire life, she was loyal in her personal life as well. Sylvia was only married once, and that union was to a New York City firefighter that eventually turned into a teacher. They were married for 44 years until he passed away. Slap my left testicle, but these days, it's not unusual to see celebrities be married and divorced to 5 different people within a decade. I guess the phrase, through thick and thin, just goes right out their booty hole when they're busy cheating on their spouse. But anyhow, so far we learned that Sylvia was the product of the Great Depression and that she worked the same job her entire life as a secretary. So let's expand upon her lifestyle before we dive into her investing strategy. As I alluded to earlier, Sylvia was frugal for the most part from seeing the financial implications and poverty of living through the Great Depression. Sylvia had more than than enough money to drive a fancy vehicle in New York City, but instead, she always took the subway to work and chose public transportation modalities whenever possible. And here's a fun fact. There was a story I read how she went to work during 9/11, but obviously things were chaotic that morning. Instead of using a taxi to go back home, she waited at a bus stop to ride the bus instead. And same story during the winters. When it would snow more than the dandruff on your head, she would wait in the cold and use the bus instead. Being frugal was just in her DNA. She also didn't buy fancy possessions, but she did spend her summers off traveling the world with her husband. I guess she was one of those people that believe in the whole, it's better to spend a lot of money on experiences than it is on a materialistic item. And when it comes to this belief, to a certain degree, I actually agree. For instance, live concerts just slap differently, especially if it's a musician that you've only listened to on Spotify or their music videos on YouTube. Seeing the band perform in person is just a magical experience that I just can't describe into words. So for me, even though the tickets can be a little pricey at times, I don't mind paying for the occasion. And funny enough, when I used to live in Los Angeles, I got to see Chris Tomlin perform live twice in the span of 6 months. I was just kind of lucky. On the flip side, Sylvia's priority to travel for fun reminds me of the opening scene from the movie Up, where I will not spoil it for you, but the first 20 minutes of the movie will make a ninja cut onions next to you. It is really sentimental and relatable. So if you're looking for a family-friendly movie recommendation, Up came out in 2009. And here's the kicker. Sylvia lived in a rent-controlled apartment, meaning it wasn't luxurious or anything crazy. Literally the bare necessities for people to live in exchange for a monthly rent. That isn't ridiculous. I'll never forget how all of the rentals during the pandemic, especially in the US, ballooned up in valuation. When I was in grad school, I remember when my lease was coming to the end, and I was notified that my lease, the monthly rent, was going to go up by $750 a month in extra, whereas nothing else changed on the property. In fact, because it was the pandemic and there was a staffing shortage, the apartment complex looked worse than it was the year prior. So they were expecting me to pay more for less. That's when I decided eventually I want to become a homeowner. That's one of my life goals that I'm sharing with you. But anyways, because her living accommodation in New York City was a good situation, it helped her to save more money that she then used to invest into the stock market. On the other hand, you're lucky to have an elevator in a rent-controlled apartment. Let's just put it that way. So if you live on the 5th floor, you're going to end up with really big calves and you're going to be enjoying cockroaches. But then again, it's New York City, so even if your rent is like $6,000 and you live in a nice place, you probably still have cockroaches. Sylvia preferred to live in a rent-controlled apartment out of choice, not because it was her only option. And from what I've read, Sylvia wasn't frugal to the point of depriving herself. If she or her husband wanted something, they wouldn't mind paying for it. They would just buy it. They made sure that they lived in comfort, but avoided excess spending, if that makes sense. So she was frugal in certain aspects, but also wasn't afraid to spend some money to increase her life quality. So we can sum up her lifestyle as frugal and simple. In fact, she and her husband chose not to have kids, which I think helped their fortune building, because in 2024, raising a single child from birth to adulthood will cost about $300,000, and then people wonder why less and less people want to have kids, especially the delusional baby boomers who are frustrated at their grandchildren for not having kids when kids cost more than student loans. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm being cynical. If you are a father, maybe you can tell me in the comments section the joy of being a dad, or maybe you can agree. Okay, I hear you. That was way too much backdrop and information. Let's go ahead and talk about her investing strategy. As the secretary for a Wall Street law firm, she was handling more than just the telephone and appointments. She was also in charge of the personal finances for some of the top partners, meaning the lawyers would tell Sylvia which stocks they wanted and she'd get it done. Sylvia would buy the stocks through the brokers and then she would copy their stock investments play by play. Obviously with less money because she was making these investments investments on a secretary's salary. And according to Indeed.com, in 2024, the average salary for a secretary is $17.86 per hour in the United States. So to put it into perspective, imagine making a hair above minimum wage for the local environment and then investing with discipline and focus. So since she was located and based in New York City, she was probably paid around $20 an hour in today's dollars when she was new to investing. And then by the end, I wouldn't be surprised if she was paid around $35 an hour. Now, Sylvia's portfolio was never publicly disclosed, but honestly, if you invested into almost any S&P 500 company in the 60s or the 1970s or 1980s, you would be more than happy today. So I am going to assume that she invested into blue chip companies considering her money grew and compounded through the decades. So when it comes to her portfolio, what I think is more important for the story was the decision to be consistent and time in the market. She was investing from the late 1940s all the way to the early 2000s. So I think that's more important than what individual investment choices that she made. And I can feel your anger already, but it's true. Sylvia accumulated $9 million with small contributions in the salary of a secretary, so we can make an assumption that she invested into dividend compounders. And a call out that I want to make is that she did not sit out on the sidelines during stock market crashes or bear markets. Sylvia invested time after time. And the reason why I'm saying that is there are some folks who experience financial PTSD from the '08 recession or even the pandemic recession, and they're still waiting on the sidelines with their cash. On the other hand, Sylvia would have experienced and invested through the post-World War II recession, the Arab oil embargo market crash, the 1980 recession, the dot-com bubble crash, and even the '08 Great Recession. So despite all of the doom and gloom in the headlines that told people to stay away, Sylvia kept investing without her emotions scaring her out of the market. And over the long run, she did more than okay. Here's the kicker. When I read interviews with her loved ones after she passed away, they were absolutely stunned. Her family members were shocked when they found out about how rich she really was. Sylvia lived so below her means that they never expected anything in the ballpark of $9 million. What I'm trying to say to you is that if you don't wake up, your retirement portfolio is going to be $50 and an Amazon gift card worth $10. And if that sounds like a dream come true to you, then who am I to poop on your birthday cake? But I wonder, when it's your time to leave this world, what would surprise your loved ones more? Your net worth being $60 or a $600,000 dividend retirement portfolio? And picture this with me. After you pass away, imagine your loved ones going through your belongings to make a pile of stuff to donate to Goodwill, and they stumble upon your collection of butt plugs. That could be your last laugh from the grave. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the aftermath. After Sylvia passed away, what did she do with her $9 million portfolio? Well, remember, her husband passed away before she did, and they had no children. So Sylvia donated nearly all of her fortune to education. She also gave a good chunk of change towards Hunter College, what you see on your screen right now, which is where she went to school. And then she also gave a small amount of money to her friends and family. Her donations paved the way to create a college prep course for thousands of youth that wants to pursue higher education but can't afford it otherwise. And based on my research, I found out she was very passionate about education because one of her biggest life regrets was not being able to attend law school after college due to a handful of reasons, finances being one of them. So she settled as a secretary for decades but still lived a happy life. But I am sure she always had that lingering thought in the back of her head about how different her life would have been if she was a lawyer instead of serving a lawyer as their secretary. And I can relate to her on a different level. Hear me out. I am actually one of those stupid and crazy guys in life that went all in and pursued their dreams. Now, things didn't work out for me, and it put me into a depression for a handful of years. And I was that miserable guy that always thought about how I could have done things differently, or if I were to have just gone to one more networking event, maybe it would have worked out. But eventually, with time, I realized it wouldn't have made a difference. Things unfolded the way destiny had planned. And although I failed and embarrassed myself, I'm here today to say that I have no regrets. I understood the assignment that we only live once, so I decided to just go all in because sometimes opportunities are only there when you're in a specific location or age bracket, and at the time I had both of those going for me. So I chased my dreams, I failed, and I don't have regrets now. Because I'll tell you what, regret will destroy a man's outlook in life. Regret is one of those things that you go to sleep with and you wake up with. Regret can potentially haunt you for the rest of your life. Knowing that, I took my chances, gave it all that I had, and still failed. So that's what ultimately led me to the safe path of being a corporate guy, since my plan A, which was my dream of becoming an actor, didn't pan out. Then I quickly realized, even though I had the assets, the brains, and the intangibles to thrive in corporate America, I wouldn't be happy pretending to be someone to fit the mold. That's why now I work part-time at a minimum wage job to pay the bills, and I make YouTube videos full-time that yield about 60 cents an hour. You know, sometimes I wish I were like my peers where I could just put my head down and grind it out in the rat race. Unfortunately, I'm just not wired like that. I just can't do it, especially for my mental health. So although society would label me as poor, and I'm now earning way below the average income in America, despite all of that, I'm a happy man. If you're someone that places respect and recognition based on income alone, then yeah, I'm bottom of the barrel. A nobody. But even though I'm at the bottom of the totem pole, I mean it when I say that I'm happy. I'm living a rich life, doing what I want, and making do paycheck to paycheck. And if you are happy as a man in this modern world, you have more riches than a majority of people. And that's something I realized quickly on. Or maybe that's just what I tell myself at night to cope with the fact that I went from 6 figures to barely having enough money to make do. I apologize if that was too much information, but thanks for coming out to my TED Talk and my topic of regret. And I know I make a lot of jokes on this channel, but that was actually a true story, and that's part of the reason as to why I sold my car to ride a bicycle around town. I did not get a DUI, but by selling my car, I now don't have any car insurance payments or other maintenance-related fees. And you're right, this is a channel that is dedicated to the stock market and dividend investing as a strategy. But if there's enough interest, I can make a quick video sharing with you guys my life story, because I'll tell you, it's a pretty wild tale, but I have the receipts and proof to back up everything that I went through. But let's go ahead and circle back to Sylvia and talk about the biggest takeaway. If you build up $9 million over your lifespan, you don't have to do what she did or what Ron Reed did and donate all of it with an altruistic heart after you pass away. What I'm trying to say is that while you're still alive, you can spend $300,000 for a new house, you can spend $100,000 on your dream car, you could even throw $5,000 on a new wardrobe from Costco, or do what you want with the money. Just because you build up a $1 million retirement portfolio, it does not mean that you cannot use it. And if you don't want to pass the money on to someone or something else, you don't have to. You can spend all of your retirement portfolio before your time is up and enjoy your life as much as you want while you're still alive with the means to do so. But, this is a big but, the lesson in Sylvia Bloom's story is still fantastic. Slow and steady dividend investing can build wealth regardless of your current job, salary, title, or your underwear size. That's the point of the video. Consistency and time in the market invested into high-quality compounders can make an average person wealthy and rich. Even you, and even me, and even your ex-boyfriend. And I completely agree with you. Working until you're 96 years old is like playing a video game on Challenger mode. So, mad respect to Sylvia, but my personal game plan is to retire by the time I'm around 60 years old. And when I do, I'll turn into that crusty old man who works on his hobbies and garden all day, and goes to his local Cracker Barrel after church on Sundays. And by the way, not financial advice, but when you retire, please please do not retire away from something or just retire from a job. Instead, retire towards something, whether it's a hobby where you can go balls deep into, whether it's a lifestyle where you go traveling all around, or even towards a new second life. What I mean by that is if you spent 20 years in the military and retire with a pension, maybe you can have a second career as a stripper for Chippendales, flinging around your 2-inch Slim Jim for overweight women. Just for fun, of course. I've read somewhere that when people retire from their job and do nothing but drink in their retirement, they end up croaking soon after because their life loses meaning, purpose, and structure. Just something to think about. Anyways, I'll talk to you next time. Stay safe, my friend. I love you. Bye-bye.